Hi, good evening everybody. I'm getting a text just as I'm starting this video, so I'm reading it. And it's so embarrassing. I have to squint for everything these days. So, man, I'm thinking I might only have 30 more years of eyesight. I don't know. Hopefully I have 30 years. Hopefully my eyesight will last 30 years. 30 years is a long time though, you know. I'm 53 and, so if you say that a person if a person becomes an adult when they're 20, let's say, rounding up from 18 technically, lawfully I guess might be adulthood, but let's just say 20, then, that means I've got another life, basically, right? 30 years so far from 20 to 53 and roughly, and another 30 years. That's pretty amazing. It really is. And I'll say too that you look at Donald Trump and that guy, I mean, just think about the boundless energy that guy has. He's doing is it something like 3 rallies a day or something, or 3 a week or something. I mean, even if it's 3 a week, I mean, for a 70, I think he's 72. And I mean, just unbelievable energy and mental acuity and articulateness and spirit. And, it's amazing. It's just amazing, regardless of how you feel about him as president. I'm sure there's other 72-year-olds that way, but, listen, there's a lot that are not, right? I mean, a lot. So, and I want to add to that on a couple of occasions I've been at the gym and met some 80-year-old guys, 80 plus, and they just have, at the gym, they just have fire in their eyes, I mean, just passion, and they have things that they want to talk to you about, things they want to tell you, and it's just amazing, to encounter people like this. And it just reminds me of that old saying, you don't stop playing because you get old because you stop playing, so anyway, so yes, it is embarrassing that I have to squint for everything, but I'm going to be working on some remedies for that. Tried some things with no success thus far. But I'm going to keep working at it. So, although I have to admit the eyeball exercises, yes, there is actually such a thing. The eyeball exercises, when I do them, and that's my struggle, is that it's difficult to do things that you need to do that are important, but they're not urgent. If that makes any sense, this stuff is important. And there's no immediate reward, but it's not urgent. If I start these eyeball exercises now or next year, it's like, well, that's not really a huge thing. The sooner the better, obviously. But I mean, it's not urgent. So I'm kind of like so many people, I'm sure, but I'm kind of tend to be tyrannized by my circumstances. Just kind of responding to this, respond, kind of a reactive, kind of living, I'm sad to say that I kind of live my life in a kind of a reactive mode, and that's something else I need to work on. So, to have greater forethought, to be more of a planner, more proactive as opposed to reactive, and that whole line of thinking. So, I don't really have too much to say today. I just like doing this, so I'm going to do it. I don't know why I like to do it, but I do. I mean, actually, I do have a whole philosophy behind that, but I think everybody should do it. Frankly, I think that we need to hear each other's voices. I think it's a sign of social sickness when you have 1 or 2 or 3 or 50 or even 500 people telling 100 million people what to think. That's some real serious sickness. I mean, that's spiritual death. It's like you're on your spiritual deathbed. when that's the case. You know, we think back to the days of Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather and Tom Brokaw and these, you know, whoever. These 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 people were telling everybody what to think, you know. They were telling everybody what the facts are, you know. And again, I just think that that's a sign of social sickness, of social death, of spiritual death, you know. And so I think that it's healthy for the social and the intellectual, the spiritual organism or ecosystem when there are, you know, millions of voices influencing the attitudes and opinions of millions of people, you know. So I've invented a little phrase of late as well that says, I want to be the leader of a leaderless revolution, you know. I want to be a leader of a leaderless revolution where everybody who signs up is a leader. So it's leaderless, and yet everybody's a leader. So, you know, I don't want to change the world. That's how we all think when we're teenagers, right? I want to be great. I want to change the world. No, I don't want to change the world anymore. I have no desire, you know, literally no desire. But I do want to change my world, you know. I want to change my world for the better. And so when you start to break that down, it's like, well, wait a minute. If I change my world for the better, if I just have an impact on one person, then I've accomplished that goal, you know. And it's like, I believe it's a Taoist saying that says that, is it Taoist or Taoist? I think it's Taoist, but it starts with a T, but I think you pronounce it like a D. I'm not sure, but I think that's the way it is. It says if everybody cleaned their front porch, the whole world would be sparkling clean. You know, so it's the same principle. You know, if everybody was a leader for good in their world, then we wouldn't need these leaders of millions. You know, we wouldn't need these fancy Nancy, spit shined, you know, leaders on TV leading millions of people or telling millions of people what to think, what to do, and where to send their money and how to spend their time. And you know, I think it was under the Bill Clinton administration that the head of the DHS, Department of Health and Safety or something like that. I can't remember all the technical details, but some lady, she was a lady, and she was telling us how to sneeze. I mean, it was the Dracula, it was the Count Dracula days, you know. I mean, it's just, you know, I mean, I think that really when we have this idea that we're all leader, or you know, that we should all be leaders of a leaderless revolution, you know, that we should all, that we're much more sensitive to being insulted, you know, to being treated like something less than we are, you know. So that when you have that idea, you know, then when somebody gets up and insults you without explicitly insulting you, right, like treating you like something less than what you are, you know, then you have a natural and a healthy and a rational and a reasonable objection to that, you know, and the reaction that you have to stand up and say, hey, don't talk to me like that, you know. I'm not a child. I'm not an idiot, you know. I'm not, and, you know, there are other examples that I've experienced of late that I won't get into because I'm not in the mood to be provocative at the moment, at least not right this minute. You know, like that. You know, we should not allow people to insult us, you know, in the way that they talk down to us, you know. It's not right, you know. And when they do that, right, they are, in fact, they are disembodying, right, as opposed to embodying. They are disembodying the principle of being a leader of a leaderless revolution for good, you know, because they are damaging their world, right? Because if you tear anybody down, you know, if you insult anybody, if you talk down to somebody, if you treat somebody less than what they are, then you're damaging your world, right? So And we shouldn't allow them to do that for their own good and for the good of our world, right? I mean, talk about changing your world. Make sure that people are not insulted by other people. You don't have to be crazy about it. You have to be, spectacular. It doesn't have to be spectacular. It can be quite polite. Doing right doesn't have to be dramatic. You can just reasonably say, hey, that's not right. I mean, that's all you have to do, really, I think, in many cases, if not most, probably most. It's rare that you really have to kick and scream and put up a real fight. I mean, and God, and if it ever gets to that point, well, then somebody has failed, right, to let things get so bad that a reaction or an action of that nature and of that scale is required, is appropriate, right? Because sometimes it is appropriate, but I'm saying when it is appropriate, somebody has failed in allowing things to go that far, So yeah. So like I said, I just enjoy doing this. But what I do want to talk about institutionalism tonight, because I had some interesting, what I thought were interesting thoughts about it. And I want to get it out there, even though, because I'm trying to put words to these ideas that I have, and I don't really feel like I've accomplished that goal yet. But I've got a few more words today than I had yesterday, and kind of in a way, might be distant, but in a way that is similar to being the leader of a leaderless revolution. I also believe that we were made to be conduits as opposed to repositories. So, like fiber optic cables, as opposed to, some, I don't know what a good example of something that is not a conduit would be. You could say a river as opposed to a lake. I guess you could say that. But for some reason, when I think about conduit, I think of a fiber optic cable. Excuse me. So, a fiber optic cable, like, I don't know, like maybe an old-fashioned rotary phone, or, something that has an end, or more specifically, something that's a collecting point for stuff just to sit. I think that when we conduct ourselves in such a way as to exercise the notion or the idea that we're conduits, it's what causes us to grow. And I also believe that it is what empowers us to reach the people that God has put us here to reach. Because if you're 14 clicks ahead of somebody in some developmental process, whether it's spirituality or technical knowledge, any kind of knowledge, anything, relationship, emotional, whatever. If you're 14 clicks ahead of them, you're going to be frustrated. You might be frustrated trying to teach them because they're so far behind you. They're not going to understand. You're going to have to struggle and work and sweat to dial back your lesson, so to speak, even if it's like a friendly, organic, just sort of free-flowing, natural lesson, So I'm not talking about a formal lesson, but in any case, it's the same. You're going to have to dial it back so far, it's going to be very awkward for you. It's going to be painful. It's going to be work, But if you're just 2 clicks ahead, that's like a natural place for one person to reach another person, to bring them forward, right? So, like I said, I don't have the words that I want to have to explain the ideas that I've been thinking about, but I have more words today than I had yesterday. So I just want to get them out there because, maybe there's somebody that, that I can reach in my stunted state of existence, right? And, I believe that God is infinite, and therefore I believe that my progress and my development is infinite. Therefore, I must also logically believe that no matter where I am on that infinitely long fiber optic cable, I will be in a stunted state because I will have infinity yet to go, right? So that kind of thing just fascinates me. It really does. I mean, and it just like, it's so completely ridiculously, lights my fire, I guess you could say. I mean, gives me energy and passion and excitement, and just to think about that, just to think about that, it really does. But so with respect to institutional, I've been struggling because it's like, I know there's something here. I just can't put my finger. I can't really. I don't have the words that I want to have to. And it's just frustrating. It's like, I feel stuck, But then I realized, I was like, wait a minute. Because I see people hiding behind institutions all the time. I see them. They, institutionalized medicine. They use institutionalized medicine as a tool of manipulation and abuse all the time. My family locked up my father because he has Alzheimer's. Oh, Alzheimer's. Every time I hear that word Alzheimer's now, my skin just crawls. Because it's like, that's just what you say when you want to get somebody off your back. I mean, does he have Alzheimer's? Yes, no, maybe. I mean, no, he didn't have. As far as I'm concerned, he didn't have Alzheimer's. Oh, well, the doctor said, you can get it. Doctors disagree all the time. I mean, it's like, and why are we even arguing about this in the first place? We should be taking care of the man regardless. Unless he has some deadly infectious disease that's going to kill everybody, then, we really should be taking care of him. Period. I don't care whether he has Alzheimer's, but they make it's like this giant red herring, but it's got I'm getting off on a big digression that is probably a great detractor to everything I want to say, but nevertheless, it is what it is. So, it's just like a giant red herring. It's like, no, it doesn't matter, But people here, it's one of those words. It's one of those, it's like a word that flips a switch in people's brains. There's got to be better words to describe these words. But Alzheimer's is one of those words. Conspiracy is one of those words. Hate is one of those words. Racism is one. They use these little words. They flip switches in people's brains, and it causes people robotically just like. You can almost see it in their face. It's like they just have a robotic reaction to this switch that somebody just flipped, just simply by virtue that they uttered a word. It doesn't even have to be true. There doesn't even have to be any value to the statement. They just utter the word, and everything changes. And this word Alzheimer's, it just has the blessings of the institution. But and it's all kinds of institution. I mean, it's not just medicine. It's institutionalized education, institutionalized commerce, institutionalized religion, institutionalized government, institutionalized medicine, institutionalized education. Oh my gosh, that's a huge one. It's wow. This man. Anyway, so I finally realized. Wait a minute. Listen. Institution, look, people that go and sign up for a program at an institute, let's just take institutionalized education, for example. Let's just take it. Listen, when you go to sign up for a course study at a university or college, listen, there's whatever subject you're studying, okay, there's hundreds of thousands guaranteed, possibly even millions of books on that particular subject. And yet somehow somebody has convinced somebody that has convinced somebody that has convinced somebody that has convinced somebody that you can't learn about that subject unless you go out and sign up for this little program, this little Boy Scout, Girl Scout, 8-step, 12-step, 40-step, 80-step program where it's all laid out in advance, like a little curriculum, like a little preschool crayon box, and everything is all industrially, free market, capitalistically set up for you. And out of those hundreds of thousands of books, they're going to pick 75 or 50 that's going to teach you all about that. It's like, no. You know, no. I mean, yes, but also no. I mean, there's two sides. I mean, I'm not saying there's no value. I'm saying that it is wrong to assign so much value to this rite of passage or whatever the heck it is. It's just become a giant joke, right? I mean, the whole system has just become a giant money-grubbing joke. I mean, they say that universities are not even universities anymore. They're hedge funds. That's how much money they're just like, it's just a giant money grab, you know? And it's all based on gullibility. You know, so it's just a joke. I don't really know a great number of people that takes the system seriously anymore. I'm sure they're still out there, but I personally don't know a great number of people. And I hear a lot of people talking about how silly it is, you know, the whole thing. Because out of all these hundreds of thousands, look, in my opinion, my perspective is that you'd be a lot better off to go pick your own 50 books. I mean, read a book, and then read another book, and then every time you go pick, because you are going to thrive as a human being, as an individual, when you are a true expression of yourself, right? And if you've got somebody picking everything for you in advance, the next 4 years, 8 years, 12 years of your life, they got it all nailed down. It's like, okay, you're no longer an expression of yourself. You're an expression of those people, you know? And then at the end of it all, not only are you going to be an expression of those people, but you're going to be in debt, quite literally, to those people for ridiculous, unjustifiable, absurd, abusive, usurious amounts of money, right? And yet, people hide behind these. So what had occurred to me is that this is what it's like, because metaphors are so helpful, right? I mean, so incredibly helpful, inestimably helpful, right? And there's a whole philosophical angle to all of that as well, but I will forego that. I'll control myself for once and not digress off into some crazy abstract place. So this is the metaphor that occurred to me today. Imagine you take your child to the carnival, you know, or to Disney World or to some theme park, and they ride a merry-go-round, right? And they get on the merry-go-round, they get off, and they say, "Wow, Daddy, wow, Mommy, that was amazing. I had so much fun. I would love to do that again someday. I'd like to do it again right now. And the most amazing thing is, now I'm a master welder." It's like, wait, what? Like, you're a master welder? Yes, Mommy, I rode the merry-go-round. Now I'm a master welder. I could go home and build one of those. It's like, no, that's not how it works. You know? So when we go to an institution and participate in their prefabricated, pre-programmed, highly selective, dumbed-down program of education, indoctrination, whatever you want to call it. You know, in some cases it's extreme indoctrination with little micro amounts of education. In some cases it's half and half. In all cases it's some of both. All cases. And indoctrination, technically, in the pure sense, is not even a bad thing, but, you know, it's a question of degree. So when you go and you sign, and it doesn't matter, institutionalized education, institutionalized commerce, you know, people go and they sign up for these programs and they come out and they're like, oh, now I am a master welder because I just rode that merry-go-round. It's like, no, just because you walked in that building and somebody handed you a program of where to be when, and how to bow and how to curtsy and what the rules are and what books to read and what chapters of what books to read by what date, and how many jumping jacks you have to do every morning and this and that and that and this, and you go and you do all of that, okay? You just rode their merry-go-round. It doesn't mean that the glory of that institution has anything to do with you. Now, if you go out into the world and you do something great, and you attribute the thing that you have done with your merry-go-round experience at that institution, well, that's an entirely different story, right? I mean, then you, you are a testimony to the value of riding that merry-go-round, But, you got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people riding these merry-go-rounds. I mean, people talk about statistics. Well, on average, but, sorry, if you live your life by statistical analyses, it's like, I would say that you don't know very much about statistical analysis, for one thing, and which is the lesser point. But the greater point is that you know almost nothing about human potential, because human potential has nothing to do with statistical, statistical analysis can be helpful. It never hurts to have the analysis. But to be a prisoner of it, to allow yourself to be defined by it, to me, that's a pretty big mistake. To me, just my opinion. So, that's pretty much it. After all that beating around the bush and whatnot and so forth, that's pretty much it. It's that just, I don't really take people seriously when it becomes apparent that their self-worth is wrapped up in some institution that they literally had nothing to do with building. They might have ridden their merry-go-round, okay, but when you ride a merry-go-round, that doesn't make you a master welder, right? And if this institution is really great, well, then somebody somewhere, probably, it's not guaranteed, but probably, because some institutions with a reputation of being great are not actually great, they're actually evil. But that's another issue. So let's just say that if that institution is great, then somebody somewhere did something really great and they built a great institution, okay? But does that really... See, I don't look at it that way. I don't look at it like you ride a merry-go-round, you're a master welder, I look at what are you doing right now, What are you doing today? You might have done, even outside of institutions, you might have done something great last week, or the week before that, or a couple months ago, or 10 years ago, 20. But what are you doing right now, right? People talk about, God wants us to do great things, and then somebody does something great, and they think that they've done what God has wanted them, that they have done what God wants them to do. It's like, well, I don't look at it like that. I look at it like God wants you to do something great today. Forget about yesterday. Whether it was great or not, forget about it. Do something great today. If you did something great yesterday, that should empower you to do something great again, right? And by great, I don't necessarily mean like something that receives the applause of men. Well, so I don't want to be